Good day, everyone. We are the group Rotasio and we're going to report about the Philippines a century hence. The Philippines a century hence is an essay written by our national hero Jose Rizal to forecast the future of the country within 100 years. Rizal felt that it was time to remind Spain that the circumstances that ushered in the French Revolution could have a telling effect for her in the Philippines. The contents of our report are the following: the cause of sufferings and deteriorations, which we'll discuss by Sandrina Piano; the inevitable, which we'll discuss by Maria Celine Peralta; results prophecies, Fedor Hagor's influences, which we'll discuss by me, via Claire A. Padre; and the challenges to the Filipinos, which we'll discuss by Micah and Burgonio.
Cause of sufferings and deterioration. The population caused by military campaigns. Nang dahil sa mga militar na nagbabantay at gumagawa ng plano sa isang lugar o bayan, madaming tao ang nadadamay. Yung iba ginagawa nilang alipin at yung iba naman ay napapatay. Dahil doon, unti-unting nauubos ang mga tao sa lugar na yun para lang sa plano nilang labanan at pagsalakay. Poverty and neglect of families because of male recruitment. Popolo y Cervicos. Noong panahon pa ng Kastila, uso noon ang polo y cervico o di kaya in English ay forced labor na kung saan lahat ng lalaki na may gulang 16 hanggang 60 ay kinakailangan ng magtrabaho ng sapilitan, mapadelikado man o mahirap yung gawain. Ang mga Pilipino ay nakadepende sa hanapbuhay na agrikultura at dahil sa polo y cervico, nawalan ng oras ang mga Pilipino para maghanap buhay para sa kanilang sariling pangangailangan. Kaya ang resulta, nagutom, nasugatan, and worse, namatay ang ibang lalaking manggagawa. Depressing retardation and retrogression. Ang mga Pilipino noong panahon ng Kastila ay naging alipin, kaya ang kanilang mga saloobin ay di nila na ipapahayag dahil natatakot sila sa kung ano ang pwedeng mangyari sa kanila. Deterioration of the old culture. Kung ano man yung mga bagay na kinagawian ng mga Pilipino bago dumating ang mga mananakop ay unti-unting nawala sa kanilang pagsalakay.
The inevitable. The question then arises as to what had awakened the hearts and opened the minds of the Filipino people with regards to their plight. Eventually, the natives realized that such oppression in their society by foreign colonizers must no longer be tolerated. For those who had strong spirit over the liberty of the country, independence was assured. But for those who were discouraged and disillusioned by sad experiences, shall be a prison of the colony forever. Will the Spanish islands continue to be a Spanish colony? And if so, what kind of colony? Will they become a province of Spain, with or without autonomy? What sacrifices will have to be made? Will they be separated from the mother country to live independently, to fall into the hands of other nations, or to ally themselves with neighboring powers? What will become of the Philippines within a century? Will they continue to be a Spanish colony? For the liberal Spaniards, the ethical condition of the people remained the same. For the friars and their followers, they have progressed. For many Filipino ethics, they have retrograded. The Spanish were able to take hold of the Philippines for 3 centuries, because the Filipinos remained faithful during 3 centuries, giving up their liberty and their independence, sometimes dazzled by the hope of the paradise promised, sometimes cajoled by the friendship offered them by a noble and generous people like Spanish. Filipinos see them as protectors, but sooner they realizes that they are exploiters and executors. Enlightenment is spreading and the persecution it suffers quickens it. If this state of affair continues, what will become in the Philippines within a century? People start to awaken, and if the government doesn't change its acts, a revolution will occur. What do people like? A Filipino representative for the protest, and unauthorized to cry out against all kinds of abuses. Second, to practice their human rights. So here are the possible outcomes. The Philippines will remain under Spanish colonization, but with more law and greater liberty. They will declare themselves independent. The following situations explains that Rizal just wanted liberty from the Spaniards and a total separation. In his essay, we see his urge to put freedom in our land through peaceful negotiations with the Spanish government in Spain.
So we are tackling about Jose Rizal's prophecies. In his essay, The Philippines a Century Hence, or Las Filipinas Dentro de 100 Años in Spanish, he forecast the future of the country within 100 years that published in La Solidaridad. He predicted that the Philippines would stay a Spanish colony provided its citizens receives not only the rights and privileges of citizens of the Spanish crown but also the inherent rights of a human being. The Philippines will inevitably rise in revolts against Spain if continuously exploited and abused. The Philippines may be conquered by other nations after Spain's presence in the country is extinguished, which became true after he died in 1898. His vision became true. The Americans wrestled with Spain to win the Philippines and eventually took over the countries. And in 5 decades after Rizal's death, the Philippines gained her long-awaited independence. The influences of Fyodor Hagor to Jose Rizal. Fyodor Hagor is a German ethnologist who traveled throughout Asia in the second half of the 19th century. He visited the Philippines in 1859 to 1860. Dr. Hagor foretold the downfall of Spanish rule in the Philippines and the coming of America in the Philippine shore. Later then he published a book entitled Travels in the Philippines, which Rizal read and admired during his student days in Manila. His book Travels in the Philippines, Dr. Fyodor tackled about the life and peoples of the Philippine Islands and also his opinions on the potential of progress in the country. How did Rizal really met Dr. Fyodor Hagor? So after completing his studies in Madrid, Jose Rizal went to Paris and Germany in order to specialize ophthalmology. Jose Rizal arrived at Berlin in November 1886, and on January 11, 1887, he met personally Dr. Fyodor Hagor, who invited him to attend the monthly luncheon of the member of Geographic Society, where Rizal had the letter of introduction to Dr. Fyodor Hagor from Blumentritt. Rizal became a member of Anthropological Society and the Geographical Society of Berlin with the help of Dr. Fyodor Hagor and Dr. Mayer's recommendation. So, Rizal was the first Asian to be recognized by Europe's scientists living in Berlin to gain further knowledge of ophthalmology, to observe the economic and political condition of the German nation, to associate with famous German scientists and scholars, and publish his novel Noli Me Tangere.
Challenge to the Filipinos. Rizal had written 2 letters left in the hands of his friend in Hong Kong, Dr. Marquez. It was marked to be opened after his death. The first one was addressed to his beloved parents, brothers, and sisters, and the second letter was addressed to the Filipinos, which we are going to tackle about. Part of his second letter states that always I have loved our unhappy land, and I am sure that I shall continue loving it till my latest moment. In case men prove unjust to me, my career, my life, my happiness, all I have sacrificed for love of it, whatever my fate, I shall die blessing it and longing for the dawn of its redemption. What are the challenges that really Rizal wanted to tell on every Filipino?
Rizal made three challenges from past, present, and future. For the past, he challenged himself. He stated that, but I know also that hardly anybody else comprehends what is in my heart. I cannot live on seeing so many suffering and just persecution on my account, and so on. This shows that the problem that he was facing was the freedom from the colonization of the Spaniards and having our nation as our own. In the present, he challenges us to see what happened before. If I thought that I were the only resource for the policy of progress in the Philippines, and I were convinced that my countrymen were going to make use of my services, perhaps I should hesitate about taking this step. But there are still others who can take my place, who too can make my place with advantage. The challenges that we are facing right now are the corruption, different views and opinions, and injustice. Lastly, the future. He is challenging us to make a move for a better future. He states here that I am all my parents have, but our country has many, many more sons who can take my place and even do my work better. For this future that many generation will experience, what can we do for it? Natural or man-made problems are inevitable. For that, we can have solutions. First is to unite with diversity, have a heart to serve for our country, and lastly, be educated and respectful. Time is the test for all great historical figures, and try as his detractors might, they cannot deny that Rizal united and uplifted the Filipino people uniquely. Rizal knew the best way to awaken the youth and lead them toward right action was through education, but especially foreign education. To Rizal, Filipino nation was a nation free of injustice, oppression, and corruption. May the Filipinos of today finally begin fulfilling this timeless challenge of Rizal. That's all, and we are Team Protasio. Thank you for listening.